Ok. Em 3, 2, 1.
Fear is one of the oldest survival tools we have. It kept our ancestors from walking too close to a cliff, and it kept them from becoming a predator's next meal. Today, fear still keeps us alive. It stops us from making reckless decisions in high-risk environments. But what happens when that fear fades? Hello everyone, my name is Gonçalo Resende, and I'm an extreme sports polyathlete, which is a fancy term for professional adrenaline junkie. And I've spent years mastering fear. But I'm not immune. I want to tell you the story of my first base jump. It was at Portugal's go-to bridge for beginners, and I went with my dad and with my best friend. And since we had to take turns driving each other up the bridge to jump, I immediately volunteered to drive first and be the last one to jump. Anybody want to guess why? Because I was terrified. So I drove them, they jumped, and then I went to get some gas because we were running out. So I drove to the gas station, I arrived in the gas station, I paid for the gas, and then I just drove off without actually putting any gas in the car. Basically, I bought imaginary gas. And later, on the highway, we ran out of the imaginary gas. So now we're faced with two choices. Either wait and risk getting caught by the police because our base jumping attire at the time kind of gave away our intentions, or we could risk it, bite the bullet, and run to the exit point, about 1 kilometer. I was shaking, I was nervous, but I decided to go for it. And in the end, it was beautiful. That was my first contact with dominating fear. However, what once felt terrifying became familiar. Too familiar, actually, and it worried me. But before we talk about that, I want to show you what clocking into work looks like for me.
Em 3, 2, 1. Base.
Now, when you watch that, you probably feel something. Maybe your heart rate speeds up a little bit. Maybe your palms get sweaty. And mine did too. And that is fear doing its job. And trust me, even after all these years, I still feel it. Because I've trained myself to not lose that fear. I've seen what happens when people do. Now, we actually have a word for this loss of fear. Complacency. Complacency is the silent killer in extreme sports. Complacency creeps in slowly when danger starts feeling like routine. And it's not just a base jumping thing. It's a human thing. For those of you who don't know, the word base in base jumping actually stands for something. B for buildings, A for antenna, S for span, which is a word for bridges, and E for earth, which is a word for cliffs. And unlike skydiving, which is performed from a plane or from a helicopter, base jumping is performed from a solid object, much closer to the ground and much riskier. Now, complacency is literally everywhere. And I can prove it to you guys. By show of hand, how many people drove to this TED Talk here today? Now, keep your hands up if you remember how many traffic lights you passed. Huh? No more hands, I see. In relationships, it's about loving hard in the start, but then letting things go stale, assuming people will always be there. At work, it's about showing up, but not really being present. In base jumping, it's assuming conditions are going to be fine, without really checking. You arrive, you think, no, I've jumped in worse conditions, this is going to be fine. But that's faulty logic, because one mistake is all that it takes. Like that jump in Dubai you just saw. I had been planning that jump since 2022. And in 2023, I went to Dubai for a skydiving competition. And I thought, this is the perfect opportunity to jump the second tallest building in the country. So the date was set. All I had to do was plan for the jump. I was nervous, I was anxious, and I have this quirky method where I only pack the parachute right before the jump. You know, because I don't want it to feel too cramped inside the container for too long. And so, as I was packing, when I was done with the pack job, as I always do, I counted my tools. And I was missing something. I use a shoelace during my pack job as kind of a marker, just to keep everything in place. As I was counting the tools, I noticed something was missing. It was a shoelace. It was still inside of my container, wrapped on my parachute, rendering it inoperable. My method saved me, but I didn't jump that day. And not because I made a fatal mistake, but because I almost did. That shoelace, to me, was a warning. So, I came back 1 year later, smarter and more prepared. And that's why I'm here telling you the story of the jump, instead of becoming another cautionary tale. And trust me when I tell you, I've had friends who didn't get a second chance. Friends who are no longer with us, because they became, unfortunately, cautionary tales. Nobody chooses complacency. It creeps in because we're wired to adapt. It's biology. Think of your first day of school, or your first date. Nerve-wracking, right? But eventually, routine kicks in. It's biology. We're built to adapt. No one chooses complacency. You, sir, when was the last time you bought your wife some flowers, huh? See? That is also complacency. Complacency is literally everywhere. The worst part of complacency is that we don't even realize it's happening until it's too late. So do you guys feel scared of complacency now? I can feel the tension in the room. But don't worry, because we're going to learn how to fix it. So how do we fight complacency? Well, simple. With systems, with methods. In extreme sports, I've learned to assign real value to each part of the jump process. Some things like checking the proper functioning of the closing system of the parachute are literally life or death. They require all of our attention, all of our energy. There's no such thing as too many checks. There's no such thing as redundancy in that regards. However, to check if your leg strap buckles have little scratches on them, maybe it can wait until after the jump. It's all about knowing where to apply your energy and in building habits that match. How much time, how much money, and how much energy do you want to spend in your personal career, in your growth, in your relationships? And then you build habits that match. If your job matters, you plan clear, short and long-term goals, and you never stop learning. If your relationship matters, plan small things, a little check-in, a little cinema night, anything. And if safety matters in your extreme sports, you double-check, triple-check essential things, even when it feels redundant. And please, 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 stop wasting your time on irrelevant things. If it won't matter in 5 days or 5 years, don't give it 5 seconds. Unless it's a missing shoelace. I've learned along the years that missing shoelaces require at least 5 minutes of attention. So, let's make a choice today. Let's stay sharp, let's stay present, and let's never take what we have for granted. Because when we stop caring, that's when we start losing. And in the end of the day, If you're still feeling scared, you can just buy your wife some flowers.